Hi, it's Mr. Skelton, and I wanted to take a moment to explain some of the information that is in my more recent versions of the belt songs. Now, especially for green belt and purple belt, and I'm actually going to use a section of each of them, a couple lines from each of them, to as examples of how this is written. And I'm going to use. I'll talk about violin in this video. I'll make a separate one for viola. I'll make a separate one for cello. There's slightly different rules for each. I'm going to try to avoid going through the whole thing note by note because that can be a little bit tedious. But we're trying to get some sort of general rules so when we can read these notes, we can apply them that way. So what I'm looking at right now is the first two lines of Old MacDonald. The Old MacDonald Had a String in this version, which is the green belt song for violin. Now, it looks very much like regular music, but of course it's a little bit more colorful, and of course the colors are referring to fingerings. Okay, the blue notes, just as they were for orange belt, the blue notes are three fingers, or the third finger on the blue tape. And the red notes are first finger on the red tape. Now the question is, what string are they going to be on? Because you can have a finger on a tape, like if it's a red note, there's a first finger, but is it on the D string? Is it on the A string? And this particular song, and actually this and Purple Belt, the notes are only on the D or the A string. We don't have anything that's on other strings. So I'm going to sort of give you some general guidelines for how to tell which are which. So the first thing I wanted to explain, the couple pieces of extra information that are on here. If we look over at the left, I am labeling where 3 out of 4 of the open strings are. Now I do put the G string on here. It's at the bottom of there. We don't play any notes actually on it. We're playing notes on the D string and on the A string. Within this, but I have it there because in my updated version for the previous belt, for the orange belt, that would be there, and so I don't want to suddenly remove that and and sort of give that information or lose that information. I want that still to be known that it was so far below the staff that we can figure out what string is on there. Now the other piece of information is this gray area, this gray band that goes across from left to right. And if we're looking at the letters, we see the letter that happens to be in it is the D, which means that everything that is in the gray is on the D string. Now there's one that's a little hard to tell, which is actually the very first 3 notes, the blue ones, because they're kind of half in the gray. So what you have to remember is anything in the gray is on the D string, and those blue notes that are half in the gray are also on the D string. Okay? And the way to remember that is they're not quite high enough in the staff lines. Like, in other words, if they were to move up to the space above, they would be where the A string is, but they're not. They're just below it. So they have to be played on the D string. They're not quite high enough to be on the A string. Okay, so they're kind of in the gray, and we're going to just, on violin, remember that therefore they will be played on the D string. So if you look at all the notes in this first line, including these blue ones, they are all on the D string because we have the 3 blue ones, which I just talked about, which are D string, right? They're half in the gray there. And then a black note, 2 red notes, and a black note, right? The black note, of course, being open string, the open D. And those are like nice and firmly within that gray area. Therefore, they're D string notes. Okay, nice and keep it all in one string. The second line is where we do play some notes on the A string. And the way we can tell this is, what we do is we look at the note head, right, which is this little oval part of the note. And it doesn't really matter what happens to the stem of it. If it hangs down into the gray, the stem has nothing to do with what note we're playing. It has something to do more with rhythm, which is a completely different part. Right? It doesn't matter what string we're on for rhythm. That has more to do with how we move the bow. Um, so where the note head is for, and I mean, just quoting the song itself for B, B, A, A, those notes are up above the gray, right? The note heads are up above the gray. So you would play the B, the ones that are marked B, B, you'd be putting your first finger on the A string. And by the way, that makes the name of that note a B, right? You put your one finger down on the string, it changes the A. It's still an A string, but we now call it a B, right? The note that comes out. It sort of goes alphabetical as we add fingers. And then, of course, the open A's, I mean, makes sense that they would be A string. That's why it's called the A string. And then in the next measure, we have a note that where the words say G, right? And again, that's the name of the note. It's not the G string. It's the name of the note. And notice it is not the open G string, because remember that where I marked it on the left, that the G is way down there below all the gray. So it can't be that one. So at the risk of sounding confusing, we call it a G, but we've added 3 fingers, so it went forward in the alphabet 3 letters. So the D, when we added 1 finger, made it an E. If we were to add the second finger, it would have been an F, and so the third finger would be the G. Now that itself is not necessary to get right now. What I want you to see is that it's blue, therefore it's the third finger. It's the same third finger note that we started the piece on, and we have to remember to do it on the D string. Remember, it's partway into the gray. It's also 1 step below the open A string, so it can't be played on the A string. The way that we can really check is, if we just listen to what we're playing. If what we're hearing is bum 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 bum, right, thinking the song being E-I-E-I-O in the original version, or in this one B-B-A-A-G, right? If it's rising at the end, it doesn't sound right. So which should tell us, like, well, wait a minute, that's not how this song sounds, because most people do know Old MacDonald. And the way that I got that sound was, if I were to put my third finger on the A string, that's what it would have sounded like. It would sound like it was rising at the end, like it's a question, as opposed to kind of like the statement that the song makes. So if I were to put that on my D string, in that last note, that blue note, it would sound like B, B, A, A, G. It would have that little descending pattern that sounds correct. Or in the original song, E-I-E-I-O, right? It'll all sound the same way. So that one note is going to be the main thing that's going to be the hardest to remember. But if you can do that, then you'll do very well. The point of this Greenbelt song is not just to get you starting to play with the bow. It's also to get you used to that little crossover between the blue note on the D string and the A string notes. Okay? Now take a quick look at the first couple lines of the Purple Belt, and we have a lot of the same kinds of information. I still have those names of the open strings on the left. I still have that gray band. I still have black, red, and blue notes. There's one note, well, actually, there's a couple of them, but there's one new kind of way of doing the notes, which you see on the word boat and wing, and the syllable say for sailors, and the words cry, where it's not completely filled in. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with what finger you use or what string you're on. That has to do with the rhythm. So those notes are longer. We move our bow slower. I would ask you to watch the Purple Belt video for that specifically. Now, so this song, I just want to show you how the rules still apply to it. You have the first 3 notes, speed, Bonnie, all in the gray. Therefore, D string. The second measure, boat and like, are those blue notes that they're even though the one is not completely filled in, it's still a blue note. So they're third finger, and they have to be on the D string because they're just dipped down into that D string range. Bird on a wing are all, again, looking at the note heads, they're all up above the gray band. So they have to be up on the A string. All four of those notes are up on the A string. Okay? If we go to the second line, onward the, those three notes are also on the A string. Why? Because the note heads, the red, the black, the red, are all up above that gray, completely up above it. And then sailors cry, cry are back into that gray band. And so we're back onto the D string. Now, part of the reason I put this gray band in is because you have an advantage when you're playing a string instrument that we only have four strings we can choose from. So if we can make even just a good educated guess in the beginning for which is which, that will really, really help, because especially as we start playing things on higher strings, like the E string, for example, or like the lowest string, the G string, we get used to seeing where those things are, and it's a lot easier to figure out. We could, like I said, we make a good estimation of it, and then of course the more we actually work with notes on specific strings, the more we get used to seeing that. It's important because when you start getting into brown belt and black belt, you won't have the gray band anymore. So we want to sort of get used to seeing where they are in the staff, how high and how low they are in the staff. But for the moment, I'm just sort of highlighting that one area that's on the D string. And so that is the help I'm going to give you for green and purple. I hope it clarifies some things for you. If not, please be sure to contact me. I'm very happy to add videos. I know these aren't the highest professional quality. I will maybe someday invest in that, but it's more important to me to get you the answers as quickly as possible, because I want your children succeeding. And if they get through these two belts, the rest of them will usually be a lot easier. So it still takes work to learn them, but in terms of getting their minds around it, these will usually be a lot easier. So thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.